Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com I almost said NBA, MLP, NFL preseason live before lock show. I'm Dave Lockman on the Twitters at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, joined by Matt Gajeski at Matt_Gajeski. Hit the man up. Give us both a follow while you're at it. And today we're talking preseason football showdown slate, a little bit different than what we talked about last Thursday. But Matt, I don't have my reps under me right now. I don't have the reps in, not doing shows on this channel. Just been doing a lot on the fantasy football channel. It's like riding a bike, but it's a little bit different when you're only doing one a week.
Oh, I get it, man. I haven't been doing that many either, only in week 2 returning to this channel. It's been a lot of the fantasy stuff for me before as well.
Everyone should check out the videos you're putting out in the morning, though, for these preseason slates. I watch it every morning when it comes out, for sure.
Thanks, man. Try to give the little nuggets.
Stuff. And everything we've got going on in the fantasy football channel. You and I recorded another video today, so I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah, man. Talk some tight ends.
Good. We did running back tiers. Check it out. Go to the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel if you haven't done so yet. Hit us with a subscribe. I just had my first ever 100,000 view video, Matt, so I was pretty stoked about that yesterday.
I saw that. Congrats, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Probably the only one, but you know what? We strive for more around here at Awesemo.com. But hey, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, the New England Patriots. And last week when you and I did this show, we had a 2-game slate. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Patriots were not playing each other, but they were both on the slate. So we're talking about them once again. Things could look a little bit different depending on what Belichick and Sirianni plan on doing. But I think this is an interesting game on a number of levels. I'm really actually looking forward to breaking down, yes, a preseason showdown slate. But first, the question I have for you, and it's probably more important than anything else, because, again, last week when I asked you and we discussed strategy, it was a 2-gamer. What are we doing, or what is the strategy, the ideal strategy with a showdown slate? Now, not just a showdown slate, but a preseason showdown slate, where you're generally projecting defenses for more points than anyone else.
Yeah, so you certainly want to play them. I think they're both strong considerations in your captain spot. And you certainly want to play both of them in your flexes and low-risk contests, things like cash. Like you said, they'll accrue points for the whole game, unlike all your skill position players. And more importantly, they're going to be facing the second and third team defenses for a lot of the time. So they're very attractive plays. New England gets a slight edge today because they're a little bit of a favorite. They'll be facing the worst quarterback play on the other side. We're not expected to see a ton of Hurts, which means a lot of Flacco and probably a lot of Mullins.
I'm allowing that comment, Jordan, because it was funny from Julius. This guy. Yeah, man, all the time, off screen, on screen, you name it. All right, so I feel like when it comes to strategy, though, you're looking at defenses, obviously, and you can pull up ownership, right? Pull up ownership over at Awesemo.com. Or I'm sorry, projections, get a good idea of who the top projected players are going to look like or what they're going to look like. But more importantly, how many people do you think, and this is kind of a tough question to answer, but how many people do you think coming into big showdowns like this know that you should be playing both of the defenses? Like, is there an edge to playing them? Is there an edge to maybe going only one defense? What type of edges or ways to be different in these crazy showdown slates can you do? Or how about this, Matt? Do you not need to be different at all? Because it's going to be tough to find like a full lineup of chalk given how much variance and volatility there is in preseason games.
The field still has a lot of trouble evaluating the best plays in the slate. So in cash, I think you just lock in your 2 defenses. In tournaments, that's where you can get a little bit different. And you're probably not straying too far off the board. Maybe you're getting different by just captaining a running back instead of both defenses, or one of the defenses. So you still have them both in your lineup, but your captain differentiates you. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I'm usually not getting too crazy with the differentiation.
Marcos, no, all of the NFL streams for DFS are going to stay on this channel, 100%. I mean, the fantasy football channel is going to be straight, awesome fantasy football, like season-long stuff, which I would recommend you check out and hang with us for sure. But no, everything we did last year here is staying right here outside of a couple like waiver wire and like what do they do? Start sit videos and stuff like that. But all right, Matt. So that's strategy for you. And I think it's important that we're all in on that. But when we look back at week 1, we have a decent amount to go off of. And I think before we get into every individual player, Was there anything that stood out to you from the way either coaches ran this offense, ran their defense in terms of how long guys were allowed to go? And does that give you any idea of what we're going to see tonight?
Yeah, we saw them run Mac Jones out, and we're going to see them run Cam Newton probably a little longer tonight. But the snap counts were pretty drastically in Mac Jones's favor. You're talking about 33 snaps for Jones, just 12 for Newton. That makes sense. They have Newton. He's been on the roster for over a year now. Mac Jones is their first-round rookie. They'll continue to evaluate him. Conversely, I think we might see a little bit less Jalen Hurts. All camp reports indicate that he's doing pretty well. He's entrenched as the starter. He's not splitting first-team reps with anybody. They don't really need to see him go out there and play a full quarter or a full half. I think if he performs poorly, you might see him play 3 or 4 series. But if he performs well and you see, like, I don't know, a 70-yard touchdown drive right away, Jalen Hurts, I think, might get pulled after that first drive.
Really?
I think it's in the range of outcomes, yes.
That he could play less than last. So here's the odd thing. Here's the thing for me. While Jalen Hurts is certainly the short-term answer in Philadelphia, and I know he's performed well at camp, it still feels like they're not entirely sold on him. Now, of course, the alternative at this point is Joe Flacco, right? Nick Mullen, and my God, was he awful last week. But I wouldn't be surprised if Hurts got a quarter here. Do you think that's crazy?
No, I wouldn't be surprised about that either. I think it's more in the range of outcomes that Hurts, like, he's more volatile. You could see him play a couple series, 2-3 series. You could see him play a full quarter. I'm not sure, but Mac Jones, I'm pretty sure, is going to be out there for nearly a full half.
Are you more or less likely to play starters this week than you were last week?
There's a few starters I would be a little bit interested in. For example, I think players like Jalen Reagor would be a little bit interesting. Maybe they look to get them going, but it seems to be more on the Eagles side than on the New England side. New England didn't really give any of their 3 starting running backs over 10 snaps. If you just look at where they divvied these up last week, the only one that saw more than 10 snaps, I believe, was Damian Harris. It was Sony Michel. He had 13. And Sony Michel's had injury problems. Damian Harris has had injury problems at times. James White's just a pure pass catcher that's been with the team for a long time. They don't really need to see them. Aguilar's back. He's locked in number 1. But outside of that, New England has already battled a ton of injuries. Both tight ends are hurt. I don't know how long they send the starters out there. Conversely, the Eagles might want to get a look at some of their younger guys that haven't been with the program very long.
Already at 50 likes. I haven't even said anything yet. So thank you to all of you who love this stuff and love football as much as we do. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up for us. Subscribe to the channel. Helps us out a ton. But yeah, appreciate you. Early adopters here on the thumbs up button. I didn't even have to say anything. Good stuff. Matt, let's go position by position, and then we could even build a lineup here and see what we come up with. I'm not trying to build a cash lineup. I mean, we're obviously looking to build something that could make some waves, and then talk about what we're doing with the captain spot. We'll start with quarterback, though, on both sides of this. Mac Jones, I looked at his numbers last week, and I think they're a little bit misleading. Let me tell you why, okay? So he was 13 for, I thought it was 18. I heard you say 19, so I'll go with that. I thought I remember seeing 18, but I'm going to assume that you're accurate here because you looked at it today and I looked at it last week. 13 for 19 for, what was it, like 87 yards, I think?
Yeah, it was like 4.5 yards per attempt.
Yeah, 4.5 yards per attempt. That doesn't look great, right? But if you go back and watch Mac Jones, he had a great ball in the corner of the end zone on a deep throw. He had another one down the sidelines. I can't remember if it was I forget who it was to. Another one down the sidelines that was, an easy 30 yards downfield that was off the receiver's fingertips. So that number could have looked a whole lot different. So could his yardage totals had those balls not been dropped or, maybe, and I would say both were catchable. They would have been tough balls, but they were both catchable. So yeah, Mac Jones' yards per attempt was ugly, but at the same time, it's not like, and he did dump a bunch off to his running backs and to his receivers. I get that, but he did take some shots too, Matt. And if he's going to be taking some shots against Philly's, second teamers and third teamers who were just god awful last Thursday, Mac Jones, obviously there's only two starting quarterbacks on the slate, but there's a bunch more we can talk about. I think Mac Jones' performance could have looked a whole lot different. And I think you could get a decent performance from him for sure tonight if he plays a full half.
Yeah, and I think he's really interesting too because they're going to try to get him out there with the first team. He played one series with the first offensive line in their last game, but then all the rest of it came against backups and with backups. He was playing well into the second quarter. So I do agree with you. Mac Jones probably isn't going to be facing the best competition either. And I looked at Pro Football Focus. They did rule him with 2 drops, so they attributed those 2 throws to the receivers, not Mac Jones.
They did attribute him to the receivers. Okay, yeah, they should have.
Yeah.
Look, they weren't gimme balls. They weren't dropped in they weren't just dropped right in there. They were tough balls. They would have been nice catches, but they were definitely catchable footballs for sure. Chuck said, my daughter watched Hook today. I couldn't help thinking of Lindquist. Oh, I get it. Well, I'd say this much. Hook is a great movie. Are you at an age where Hook was like a childhood movie that you watched?
No.
No? You don't even know what it is, do you?
I have no idea.
Oh.
How old do you have to be to know?
I don't know. How old are you?
27.
I'm 34. Like, yeah, Sandlot, Little Giants, those movies.
Dude, I didn't watch a lot of like kids movies when I was a kid. I have seen like 2 Disney movies, I think.
Really?
Yeah. And I watched those as an adult.
Okay. Well, Robin Williams, just go ahead and watch it. Hook's phenomenal. Even at this age, Rufio and all that. I mean, it's great stuff, right, Jordan? Yeah, sorry, he's vaping over there. All right. Before we get to Philly and we get to Jalen Hurts and the backups here with Flacco and Mullins or whoever we have out there today, what do we do with Cam Newton? Because we started with Mac Jones. And is there anyone else do you see getting enough work at quarterback for the Patriots that could be viable?
Cam Newton's expected to play more tonight. Again, he played 12 snaps in their first game. So how much more can he really ascend to? I don't think they give him more than a quarter, but he's kind of like Jalen Hurts where he does have that rushing ability. I don't think they really test him in that regard. So I'm probably looking away from Cam Newton outside of GPPs. He's certainly viable there because of his legs. Hurts is kind of the same player for me. I think maybe he uses his legs a little bit more, but again, he just has that volatile sort of snap count.
Jordan says Matt was reading NFL playbooks and watching film as a child.
He's not entirely wrong. I grew up in a family that loves sports, so me and my brother were doing a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, you still should have had time to watch Hook, but that's besides the point. All right, let's talk about Jalen Hurts. You already said you could see him playing only, 1 or 2 series, 1 or 2 drives. I get that. I think he could play a little bit more, but does this mean right now that you're essentially off of Jalen Hurts for Philly?
He'd be my quarterback too, just because of the rushing upside. I think Mac Jones is clear, far and away QB1. Jalen Hurts is QB2 based on rushing equity. And, he's volatile, which makes the other quarterbacks volatile too. Like Joe Flacco led the team in snaps last week, but if Hurts only plays 2-3 series, Flacco probably plays more, Mullins probably plays more, and that makes them volatile GPP plays as well. But I'm probably just playing Mac Jones in my cash lineup instead of 2 quarterbacks today.
Do they have to get Nick Mullins more opportunities after that game last week? Like, do you say, he can't be that bad, let's see what he can do tonight?
That's what I thought in the first game. And then he looked absolutely atrocious. I mean, this guy that started games for San Francisco, he
almost had as many interceptions as passing yards,
which is shocking to me because he's playing against third stringers. And he previously was a starter for San Francisco, but that's neither here nor there. They actually let Flacco throw the ball a little bit. I think he's fine in GPPs. I would rank them. Obviously, Mac Jones 1, Hurts 2, Newton 3, and then get to the likes of Joe Flacco.
Doug says with the $20 super chat, thanks, Doug. Matt, big thanks for bringing the fire in preseason. Would you take Norden in cash over a second running back or a second QB, or just avoid kicker in cash?
I'm playing kicker in cash. It's Nordine for sure because Jake Elliott's looking like he's out. Reports came out that he's unlikely to play. They're warming up, so he's just not on the field right now. Pretty dooming sign considering he has an ankle sprain and he didn't practice this week. They're going to use their punter to handle kickoffs, and Philly's probably not going to go for a lot of long field goals. You'll see them go for it on 4th down more. So it is Nordine in cash. He's the only viable kicker on the slate. He's actually pretty much locked in for me. I would be debating the second running back versus second quarterback in cash before Nordine.
Have you seen the movie Heavyweights? Tell me you've seen Heavyweights.
Dude, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, You're as bad as Adam, man. Oh man, great movie. And
I've seen probably like under 25 movies like in the last 10 years.
Okay. So you definitely haven't seen Heavyweights. That might be a niche film. Anybody else for quarterback that you want to hit on?
I don't think so. I'm pretty much leaving, the Nick Mullins and Brian Hoyers alone.
Okay. And thanks again for that super chat, Doug. Appreciate you. Let's talk about the running back position. I think this is kind of interesting because with Philly, everyone was talking about how Miles Sanders is in a backfield timeshare. You and I discussed this before the show that his ADP of 57 on Underdog is just absurdly ridiculous. It's just absurdly high or low, however you want to. He should be going a lot earlier than that. But Kerryon Johnson was hurt. He was cut. You have guys like Boston Scott. You also have Kenneth Gainwell. And he's the one that there's a lot of early season, preseason hype on. They got him late in the draft, but many believe that Kenneth Gainwell was a steal there. Is Gainwell a top running back option for you today? Yes or no?
I think he is the clear number one running back to target right now. This is going to hinge on Jason Huntley. I've been looking for some updates for him. Missed practice yesterday and the day before with a rib injury, which is usually a pain tolerance thing, and he's a roster bubble guy. So Jason Huntley is going to be huge towards the projection for Kenneth Gainwell. I'm looking right now on Twitter. He's not in early warmups. So maybe that's an indication that he won't play. Gainwell ends up popping up with the biggest projection without Huntley in the lineup. It's because Miles Sanders didn't play in game one. Boston Scott played just a handful of snaps. And even Jordan Howard on the back end of the roster only played 5 snaps. They're trying to evaluate Gainwell. They recently cut Kerryon Johnson. Huntley's not expected to play. Where are all those snaps going to go? I think they do play Sanders for maybe a handful. Boston Scott should get his normal handful of preseason snaps, but the rest of them should go to Gainwell, a day 3 rookie who they're trying to evaluate. A really strong pass catcher as well. He's a guy that played a little bit of receiver in college, really strong pass catching profile. And that's fantastic in preseason DFS where you like those receptions. They're easy points that get you to a good score.
Do you start thinking about, or looking at the strength of these second and third team defenses compared to the strength of the second and third team offenses?
Those are hard to evaluate because
I can't imagine it's easy. Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit. Some guys will play with both units. So and maybe there's a guy they're trying to evaluate. This happens a lot with rookies or free agents and young players. Maybe they end up going across a couple units. So it's really hard to peg playing time on defense. It's kind of like what we're talking about with the Eagles situation where they're at quarterback where it's hard to peg the playing time. The same thing happens on defense.
Yeah, it has to, man. I mean, the Eagles, like I said last week, their third team defense was atrocious. Just Swiss cheese. But here we are, and you would assume that they'll be bad again. You just have no idea if the Patriots' third team offense or whoever they've got out there at the time is going to be any better. So obviously you would look at it and be like, well, maybe it's easier to score points that way, Matt. But generally speaking, those guys on offense that are out there are worse than the guys on defense. Or I'm sorry, as bad. You know what I mean? They're equally bad.
It's a level playing field.
Right, exactly.
Which is why kind of like Mac Jones. I mean, he's a first round quarterback, somebody the Patriots expect to start at some point playing against second stringers.
Right. And depending on how deep he goes, like, what do you think? He plays second and third quarter?
Yeah. And like Newton, I think is upwards of a quarter. So maybe you see Mac Jones enter the game late first quarter when they try to get him a drive or two with the starting offensive line. And maybe like the Sony Michel's, Damian Harris, and James Whites of the world, because they do want to evaluate him with that unit. But I do think he's going to play at least a half. Maybe
do you think there's any possibility that Cam Newton isn't the starter in week 1?
So I think it would take a lot. Right now, he does seem to be the favorite. And I know Mac Jones performed well in that first game, but I think he'd need to show a little bit more for them to pull Cam Newton. Yeah,
I think so. Or maybe Cam Newton just shows a lot less. I mean, that's the question at this point.
That's true.
I'm assuming that Cam Newton will be good enough, but last year was bad. I'm not going to lie, dude. Even if he plays a full quarter here, there is that upside. There is that rushing upside in the fact that he rushed for 11 touchdowns last season. I just don't know if they're going to be able to move the football. And Belichick obviously is going to run with another vanilla offense, particularly with the starters. So it's a weird spot, which leads me to the backfield where Damian Harris in the when they ran the first team offense, really was the clear back. But the issue that I've always had with them, and I think I've discussed this with you a lot, is you could make the argument all day for Damian Harris being the lead back, but goal line back, well, not really, because Cam Newton gets so many of those touches. And who was the only other back that was getting snaps with the first team last week? Well, it was James White. Who's your pass catching back? It's James White. So when I look at this backfield, you go, okay, yeah, sure. Damian Harris is the first and second down back. That's cool. It won't be Sonny Michel out there rotating with him. But at the same time, the upside is so capped with Damian Harris, unless he breaks one off or, does get one in from inside like the 10 or something. But there's so many things that can go against him, not just in the regular season, but even if he plays one full quarter in the preseason too.
Yeah, especially in the preseason, because we don't expect the starters to play that much. So when he's splitting that work 3 ways, it's really hard to see him getting there. And you and I both like him as a player, but he's a guy that has battled injuries at times in his career. They don't need to see him for a full quarter of snaps, and you won't tonight. And I mean, if you just look at the two backfields, New England's going to play with 5 backs, and then you have Philly playing with 4.
Right. So it's just naturally you're going to look towards Philly a little bit more. But Stevenson's another one where I scratch my head a bit, because yes, he had a great overall line last week, broke off that 90 plus, I think it was 92-yard touchdown, but they were kneeling before that. I don't even know if the defense was ready. And it was very late in that game. What do you make of him today? Should we still anticipate him getting a decent amount of work and be a strong play against, bad defensive third team defense for the Eagles?
I think he's in a slight tier below Gainwell. Gainwell's kind of by himself. Not only is there the condensed opportunity share, but you're probably not looking at a ton of snaps for Sanders and Scott. It'll mostly be Gainwell and Jordan Howard. And it was really interesting to see them give Howard 5 snaps in the first game too. For New England, I think you have Stevenson and JJ Taylor just a cut below. And that's because even though we don't expect a ton of snaps from James White, Damian Harris, and Sonny Michel, they will play a little bit. For example, in that first preseason game, we saw all of them play between 7 and 13 snaps. And that only left 15 snaps for Ramondre and 16 snaps for JJ Taylor. Those are the 2 backs fighting for this final spot. And they're 2 very different backs. Ramondre is a bigger back coming out of Oklahoma. He did catch the ball very well there, but they didn't use him in that capacity whatsoever in the first preseason game. All that work actually went to JJ Taylor, and he played 1 more snap than Ramondre. So I think if the field is taking a stance on Ramondre, loading up on him, pivoting to Taylor could make some sense, especially considering his opportunity comes in the pass game with those easy pitch and catch opportunities. Those PPR points do add up, and they're safer.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Sonny Michel, who went from being, a guy that people were very high. I think he was He was the last pick. He was the last pick in the first round, right? They drafted Sonny Michel in the first round. Yeah,
they did.
Yeah, drafted him in the first round. Rookie season wasn't bad. I mean, if I remember, I pull it up because I thought, not that it's important, but Sonny Michel is a rookie. Yeah, 931 yards in 13 games, 6 rushing touchdowns. The guy was never used as a pass catcher, but at the same time, now you look at him and Damian Harris appears to be the guy. And outside of that, James White is going to get the third down work. Where does Sonny Michel fit into this offense? And is this a spot tonight where he's going to get a decent amount of work, or should we not anticipate that?
I think he'll see slightly more work than Damian Harris, but I wouldn't expect more than 15 snaps. And I mean, he played 13 in that first game. People talk about him on the roster bubble, but New England hasn't showed that whatsoever. He was clearly ahead of Ramondre in their last game. And I know Ramondre had the big run. Maybe he's closed the gap a little bit, but nothing in training camp suggests that Sonny Michel's lost his roster spot. It is very much, according to beat writers, up to Ramondre versus JJ Taylor, which just makes me think there's not really a ceiling as far as snaps with Sonny. Of course, he could fall in the end zone, and if he does that, viable in tournaments for sure.
Yeah, like Peyton Barber last week.
Yes, for sure. And I disagree that he's playing for his job, that maybe he is in future weeks.
Oh, I never said he was playing for his job. If I did, correct me if I'm wrong. Chat was asking.
No, it's not you. That's like a common sentiment out there.
Right. Gotcha.
He's played clearly ahead of the backs that are battling for that final spot. And New England's a weird team. They'll keep 5 backs on their roster because they use that fullback, which is usually Brandon Bolden or Jacob Johnson, usually on special teams as well. That's a very valuable position to them. So they'll keep at least 3 backs, if not 4.
Right. And yeah, while Sony Michel might not be ahead of Damian Harris, he's still right behind him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
the roster spot is safe.
It's you would think so. I mean, I don't know. Belichick's done some weird stuff, but at this point, yeah, I wouldn't assume. I would assume that maybe he would like to prove that he can still get starter reps, and can still be the guy in New England. But I don't necessarily know how much work you're going to get out of him today. So, all right, before we talk about wide receivers, how would you rank your running backs today in terms of preference? And if you have any maybe tournament viable ones that are just maybe a little off the board, but are going to be a lot less owned.
I think Gainwell's number one. From there, it's JJ Taylor just with a slight edge above Ramondre. For me, it's all because of pass catching abilities, but I think those two are basically neck and neck, the same play. From there, I think the next best play is Jordan Howard, who is battling for his roster spot a little bit. He's really kind of icing the job because Jason Huntley's been injured. So I think it is Jordan Howard. They didn't use Elijah Holyfield at all in their first game. He seems to be a pure camp body, so not expecting a ton of him. But maybe it comes down to Huntley, who's injured, versus Jordan Howard for a final RB spot. I think they maybe give Howard more than 5 snaps today, but still just in the GPP range.
Okay, I like it. We have wide receivers to touch on, and well, this is where it gets a little bit messy. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it gets ugly when you're talking wide receivers because there's so much to look at. The snaps are going to be all over the place. So we'll just do it. But first, you got to check out our partner Prize Picks because they have daily prop-based contests and want to help you get started with a nice little deposit bonus. Well, everyone wants a deposit bonus, right? But also, it's just a really cool site. It's a really cool app. And if you haven't tried it out yet, I think you'll enjoy it. You don't have to deal with sharks or optimizers or mass entries or any of that stuff. All you have to do to get started is pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 players available and on the board to go over or under the projected scores. If you correctly pick 5 to a lineup, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. Now, the cool thing, too, is they have baseball, basketball, WNBA, NFL, even esports. But you can take advantage of the mixed sport entry feature. So that means if you have knowledge in several different sports, you don't just have to pick all 5 from NFL or all 5 from MLB. You can mix and match and put yourself in a pretty solid situation. So download the app in the App Store, go to Google Play, download it there. Make your first deposit using the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, and get an instant deposit match of up to $100. So use the promo code Awesemo, download it in the App Store, Google Play, wherever it is. Use that promo code, get up to $100 match deposit bonus when you sign up and deposit over at Prize Picks. All right, Matt, wide receivers. We'll start with the New England Patriots on the road against Philly, and then we'll get into a couple bets maybe that we have too after we hit on tight ends. I know you have one tight end you like quite a bit. Well, I shouldn't say that. One tight end is playing without any other tight ends on the roster. Where do we go with New England? What's up with N'Keal Harry and the whole wanting out on a trade? All of these guys like Wilkerson being another one who was a practice squad guy and has been getting some opportunities, but has kind of slowed down since the beginning of camp. Talk to me about the Pats wideouts.
Yeah, they're playing with 8. Philly's playing with 10. So we immediately want to look at New England. And then you just look at their distribution of snaps. Of course, Nelson Aguilar didn't play in week 1, but you had 2 players getting over 30 snaps for New England. It was N'Keal Harry at 36, and it was Wilkerson at 32. Those are widely to be believed the receivers battling for this last spot. So basically on the roster, you have Aguilar, Bourne, Jacoby Myers, and Matthew Slater is going to make the team no matter what because of special teams. That leaves potentially just one spot left between Harry, Wilkerson, maybe Olszewski. I think he's maybe on the outside looking in. And Wilkerson played really well in the first game. He caught 6 balls. He was the most targeted receiver. Harry only had 1 catch. However, looking at practice this week, Harry's played really well with the Mac Jones unit. And then you have Wilkerson really struggling with drops. Maybe that puts
in separation from what I've heard.
Yeah, he has not been playing well this week. Ultimately, I think both of them are on the field for the most opportunity among the wide receivers, and it probably looks similar compared to what we saw last week, where it was 36 snaps for N'Keal Harry and 32 for Wilkerson, which makes me believe Harry probably is the better play just based on ownership. I think because Wilkerson had the strong game last time out and Harry did not, maybe you see a little bit more ownership come on Wilkerson. And again, these players are virtually the same.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that, yeah, you pointed out something important. Harry played almost 40 snaps last week. He was just targeted only 1 time.
Yes.
And, you go with opportunity. Granted, they still have to get targeted, but in the preseason, anything can happen. You just want them to be on the field, Matt. You know what I mean?
Sure. And you want to compare this to like Philly, the player with the most snaps was Whiteside at just 22. So it's significantly less opportunity on Philly just because they have more players.
Right. Now, all right, let's talk about I'll come back to that. Let's talk about Philly's wideouts. This has been a really interesting training camp for them because Jalen Reagor started off rough, and now every day there's a new video of him making some insane circus grab over a receiver or over a defender. I know you've been a Jalen Reagor guy. Like I remember talking to you last year, and you're like, "Hey, don't count him out yet, Laffy." I mean, obviously, you get a little bit down given that they went him over Justin Jefferson, but that's besides the point. You've talked about him a lot. Like, hey, TCU, this guy was nasty. He can still be good. Give him a decent quarterback. And it's only training camp. So who the hell knows? One of his only targets in the week 1 of the preseason was a drop, but maybe tonight will be different. And then you have guys like Quez Watkins, who everything I'm hearing out of camp, and this is something I proposed earlier in the week on the fantasy football show on our fantasy football channel. And I think Ben and Eitan looked at me like I was crazy, that you could just see Greg Ward get pushed out. You start seeing Reagor take some of his snaps in the slot, and then Quez Watkins ends up getting a lot more opportunity. Travis Fulgham falls to the wayside as well. So there's a lot of things are in flux. There's a lot of things in motion with the Eagles. And then you've got Devontae Smith, who hasn't really been at training camp much at all with that knee injury, expected to play tonight. It's kind of crazy just for these starters and guys that are kind of fringe starters, and we don't know where they are.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on the Greg Ward thing, I don't think it's crazy to think he gets pushed out. Philly hasn't had the best receiver talent. And Greg Ward's a dude that is a veteran of the AAF. I mean, like, just we're not talking about like Hall of Fame talent here with Greg Ward. He can't play anything but the slot, and he can't run more than like 5 yards downfield. Now they have 2 first-round receivers. Fulgham actually showed a little bit. And Philly showed a willingness to give their starting receivers a decent amount of snaps. Like Reagor played 17. Fulgham played 19. Greg Ward, de facto starter in their last game, he played 21 snaps. Devontae Smith has been practicing for the last few days. He's on the field right now. He's making some pretty ridiculous catches if you want to go look at Twitter. He's been very vocal about wanting to play in the preseason. And based on everything we're seeing, it looks like he's going to give it a go. I would probably cap his snaps around 15. They're not going to trot him out there for a full quarter, anything like that. But these rookies, we've seen teams try to get them involved. Rondale Moore, they got him these really easy pitch and catch opportunities in Arizona. We've seen that with some other rookies. I think they'll probably try to get him involved, assuming he's active, which could lead to some easy catches if you're just looking solely at first team receivers.
It's a weird team, man. I mean, okay, let's do this. How many snaps do you think Quez Watkins gets? And do you think it will be mostly with Flacco in the second team?
I do think it's mostly with Flacco. He's kind of solidified his job a little bit just based on the injury to John Hightower. So there's these player archetypes that Philly looks at. They've done this. I mean, I know we're talking new coaching staff here, but this is something they've used for a while where they have a field stretcher in their offense. It's been Deshaun Jackson. They've tried to fill this with late round day 3 picks and Quez Watkins out of Southern Miss and John Hightower out of Boise State. Same dude, speed is their key. Now, Hightower is making his debut tonight. Quez has already proven himself and that speed. We saw it on the screen pass he housed last week from Flacco. He only played 14 snaps. That actually was less than Reagor, Fulgham, Ward, Whiteside, Andre Patton, who's not going to play tonight. Like, they know what they have in Quez Watkins. I think it's now on John Hightower to make this a competition.
It's also interesting to me, too, that he would have had a 90-yard touchdown had Jalen Hurts not been offline. So the reason I was asking you about that, though, is like how many of these guys that have speed like Watkins that can just, run straight down the sideline and rip off one huge play like he did with the 79-yarder. How intriguing are they to you in preseason slates where sometimes you're hoping for that one big play and that volume isn't necessarily going to be there with a lot of them? Like, do those guys grade out better for you given that, okay, they probably play this many snaps? It's not a ton, but it's also not, one series. But if he rips one off, this could be the difference in the entire slate.
I think that's an approach in big GPPs. And in 2019, we saw this occasionally. Like Jalen Hurd was the dude that broke a slate, and I believe he scored 2 touchdowns in that game. But even going back to the Quez Watkins game, he only had 1 catch, but he scored, what was it? It was a 79-yard touchdown. So
Yep.
we're talking about like nearly 14 points on 1 play by itself. If you captain him and maybe he gets 2-3 more catches, that certainly will break the slate. Watkins is a guy that fits that mold. John Hightower, somebody people that they're not talking about, he fits that mold with a game-breaking speed.
Yeah, Hightower just can't catch. He can get open. He just can't catch. That's the problem, man. He dropped so many balls last year, and he didn't even have many. He dropped more balls than he was targeted on. All right, so your top options at the wide receiver position from both sides are who?
For New England, it's Harry, Wilkerson. They're basically interchangeable for me. I prefer, I guess, Harry just based on potential ownership. From there, it's Gunnar Olszewski. He's a player that's a little more secure in his role. I think he's on the outside looking in, but maybe they try to get him a little bit additional snaps. And again, Trey Nixon's not going to play today, it looks like. That opens up a few snaps here and there for the guys on the back end. Aguilar is back, which kind of muddies the waters here. But ultimately on New England, it's Harry, Wilkerson, and then Olszewski for me. When you look to when you look to Philadelphia, I think the best plays are coming in that Arcega-Whiteside, Hightower area, the fringe roster guys that are still battling for those spots. I would put them slightly ahead of the Ragers and Devontae Smiths, who they will try to get involved. Their snap count is just limited.
When you're building lineups for Showdown, is there any part of you that says, you know, I am looking to, and I know we talked about this last week on multi-game slates, like I am looking to get a wide receiver in there with the quarterback? I would assume the answer is no. But also, do you want more wide receivers than running backs, more running backs than wide receivers? Are there any positions that you favor more? Obviously, the pricing's flat. Everyone has the same salary, which just means that, you know, you can play whoever you want. Does positional strength come into play for you at all here, or does it not a consideration?
It is a consideration. In Showdown, usually it's defenses first. Those, I'm trying to get them in my lineups first and foremost, unless there's some weird circumstance. From there, it's quarterbacks. But I also want to say it's based on availability at each position. How many players are we actually using from the roster pool? So, for example, tonight, both teams are going to try out 3 signal callers. If there were 2 on one team or another, I would have a huge preference towards the quarterbacks. And we just have the teams using 4 and 5 running backs apiece, with Philly at 4 and New England at 5. So because there's a little more concentration in the running back position, that's where I'm looking a little bit more than the quarterbacks in this particular Showdown. But in general, usually I'm favoring quarterbacks, then running backs, then pass catchers.
Okay. So essentially for you, it's just positional scarcity. And last week we saw a lot of that too, right? Not a Showdown slate, but with Pittsburgh, it might not have worked out. Well, actually, no, it did. Jalen Samuels had a solid game for sure. But these teams that just have no depth at all, but less running backs that they can give any touches to, are just going to stand out more. So it's funneling you more towards running backs. So today, that's the way you're looking at it. But next week, it might be wide receivers is how you feel, you know, or quarterbacks.
Yeah, quarterbacks in particular. I mean, running backs and quarterbacks are the ones that receive more opportunity overall. And I mean, you look at Philly, they're running a ton of 12 personnel. So receivers aren't always the best option to begin with. Only 4 catches went to wide receivers in their last game. A ton went to tight ends, a ton went to running backs, which is another reason I'm looking more towards Gainwell.
Time to talk tight ends, Matt. I should mention too, though, we had a lot of people asking the past week if we have any early sign up coupons or promos for our NFL package over at Awesemo. Yes, we do. The promo code is Blitz. So if you use that right now, Blitz, when you go to awesemo.com/promos, you can just click on it or go to awesemo.com/join. Doesn't matter which one it is. You use the promo code Blitz, BLITZ, get $25 off the entire season, the whole year, an annual NFL pass, 25% straight off the top. It's a huge discount. You guys already know Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, has created, developed, and uses all of the #1 ranked DFS player out there. If you guys weren't aware of who he was, I'm sure you are. Created all these tools. They're phenomenal. The top stack tool, which was new last year, huge hit. Ownership projections, player projections, premium Slack chat. So much other stuff for NFL that you got to check out. All of our premium articles as well. You can get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on on top of that too. If you like to MME, if you like to play a bunch of lineups, or if you're just looking to get into that, because I know people that MME that are MMEing the mini max and using Fantasy Cruncher, or the 10 cent, but still use Fantasy Cruncher and have had great success doing it. So check it out. Use the promo code Blitz if you want to get in now. If you're not ready yet, that's cool. We'll have plenty coming up, and we already do as the season approaches. If you want to go with an express weekly, a monthly, or if you want to do all sports available, you can do that as well. Go to awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code Blitz, or go to awesemo.com/promos. Check that out. All right, Matt, tight ends. New England, kind of a precarious situation. Good thing it's a preseason game. You've got no Jonnu Smith, and you have no Hunter Henry. What does that do for guys like Asiasi?
Yeah, to go further, Lacoste is hurt, and they cut Troy Fumagalli, so they only have one tight end on the roster. Their beat reporters have been saying maybe Jacob Johnson gets a few snaps at tight end. He's typically their fullback, sort of like H-back hybrid, which could make some sense. And even Asiasi, he had COVID last week. He hasn't been off COVID reserve for more than 7 days, played 12 snaps in their debut. I still don't think he plays like 100% of this game. They'll probably just go to weird 4 wide receiver formations and maybe use some big slots, things like that towards the end of the game. But it certainly makes Asiasi a more attractive play. You could see him play like 25, 30 snaps in this game. He was a pretty good receiving threat coming out of UCLA.
My thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I admittedly haven't played a ton of preseason showdown slates, Matt. But
they're fun.
I mean, I'm in it today. If I'm doing a show, I got to play. But wouldn't he be a whole lot more appealing on a slate where you have to play a tight end? I mean, here you don't have to play any tight ends, and Bill Belichick has scarcely used his tight ends not named Rob Gronkowski and the guy who killed people.
Yeah, I think he's more of a GPP play. He's certainly below Wilkerson and N'Keal Harry for me. And like you said, I'm normally not considering tight ends at all in this format, showdown that is, but just because he's the only one on the roster, he enters this like GPP territory for me.
Okay. So do the Eagles have any tight ends that are viable for you today?
I don't think so. We're not going to see a lot of Ertz. We're not going to see a lot of Goddard. They played 7 and 5 snaps respectively. And again, I think Philly starters maybe play a little more, and that's going to hinge on how Hurts plays. From there, Richard Rodgers is basically a blocker. They don't use him a ton in the pass game. Maybe he sees a few extra routes. And from there, you're going to Jack Stoll, who only played 5 snaps. It's still a 4-way split when you just have one option in New England. So it's pretty clear to me, just look to Asiasi if you're playing a tight end.
Okay. All right, Matt. So I say we got a little bit of time left here. Let's hit on our best bets and top props of this game. And then what do you say we build a lineup like the good old days where you and I used to do that on the strategy show?
It reminds me of the good old showdown slates we would do on Mondays and Thursdays.
Yeah, we'll be back for that for sure. I hope. I mean, listen, that was a great with Alex, with AB as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was. We'll do that again for sure. By the way, ratio, not too bad. 123 likes on 562 watching. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet and you're enjoying the show, enjoying Matt's killer analysis, hit that. It only takes a second, and subscribe to the channel. Almost at 57,000 subs. Thanks to you guys. So yeah, you haven't done that? Go ahead. Make it happen. Appreciate you. Best bets, top props. Do you have anything for today that stands out as, hey, I kind of like that?
I like New England. I was really surprised to see it just -1.5, considering they're going to be playing Mac Jones, like first round level talent at quarterback, a little bit longer into the game. And Philly, again, I think we see Hurts for 2 to 3 series, a quarter max. And then from there, we're going to Flacco and Nick Mullins. So I know Philly is the home team here, but I was just a little bit surprised to see the line so low. So that's my lean in the betting markets.
Okay. Snow jogging. That was actually not a joke. It was just a statement of fact. Oh, sorry. He was talking about somebody else. My fault, dude. I thought you were talking about me. I wasn't joking. I was serious. We've all seen the documentary. All right. What do you think of live? I was waiting to ask you this question. What do you think of live betting? when it comes to spots like this. Like, for example, right? We know that with these live bets, they can come off the board, things can get adjusted, but generally you got an algorithm that's just accounting for all of this as the game goes on. What do you think of live betting, say, Patriots or an over if we see Mac Jones is out there with the Eagles' third team defense, or we see, matchups where just overall higher skilled players are out there with a much worse unit against the other team, or vice versa with the under, or betting, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I think there's a couple ways you could do it. That's one, if you see some starters playing really late in the game, or they're going to, which is why I favored New England a little bit to begin with. But I think another situation is when these coaching tendencies. For example, if Mac Jones comes out and he's playing, let's just say he's playing the last drive in the first quarter. That's his drive with New England starters. He leads them down the field for like an 80-yard touchdown. We know New England's not going to bench him after that touchdown. Or if vice versa, say they go 3 and out and then Philly scores, Mac Jones is still going to be on the field for at least another quarter in the game. So that's another situation where I think you could potentially benefit just knowing the coaching tendencies. I think that's a little harder with Philadelphia today.
Sam Van Dam with the super chat. And hey, by the way, thank you for reminding me. If I miss it, just let me know. I'll always get back to it. Never intention. Usually my producer Jordan is supposed to let me know that there's a super chat, but he's slacking today, I guess. Sam Van Dam says, now that snaps are becoming more refined, is stacking a way to go tonight or still too volatile? DraftKings tournament single bullet. I think you would argue that they're not more refined tonight, right? Outside of a couple players.
Right. I don't think they're too refined in preseason, especially stuff like Showdown. I'm not going to force stacks. I'm looking just for those pockets of playing time where they're condensed. Like tonight, you probably end up with a stack either way. I imagine a lot of people are going to get to Mac Jones and then one of their receivers. But, on the main slate Saturday, when we talk about that's not a situation where I'll try to force a stack either. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. A lot of questions too coming in about, excuse me, Jason Huntley, apparently not at warmups, not there. Do you think he plays? Does it matter?
I don't think he plays. He hasn't practiced the last couple days. It does matter to Kenneth Gainwell, and this is all really positive for Gainwell.
Yeah, you would think so. Gainwell, let's build a lineup. Let's go ahead and build a lineup so I don't have to keep talking about that. We'll build a lineup and see what we come up with. We'll do it on DraftKings, Matt, and we'll start with the captain spot. Jordan, if you want to pull it up on the screen, that would be great. Thanks. Let's start with the captain spot because people have been asking, who do you captain? And I would assume there's plenty of different ways you can go here, but what are you starting with?
Yeah, in tournaments, this is a place you can gain a lot of leverage, and you don't have to get crazy off the board. Like who's an example? You don't have to play like Isaiah Zuber, third string receiver for New England. Sometimes you can just differentiate by switching the captain out in your cash lineup. So you can maybe move one of the defenses into the flex, put a guy like Gainwell in this captain slot, or N'Keal Harry if you want to go with a pass catcher, somebody with a little more upside, and differentiate from there. If you are playing the massive tournaments, I think this is where you can get off the board a little bit. And again, it's probably not at the captain slot. The craziest I want to get there is like a Mac Jones or a Gainwell, maybe a N'Keal Harry, and then maybe differentiate at one of your flex spots, playing somebody like a John Hightower who missed preseason week 1, but is battling Quez Watkins for a specific role on a team like Philadelphia. That's how I would approach the captain slot.
I like that. And as we talked about it, John Hightower has that big play upside. He gets open. It's just got to make that catch. And if you do, in fact, make the catch, good things can happen. Let's throw Hightower in there and see what happens. Let's assume we're playing the 150K showdown on DraftKings. So just large field tournament here. Try and do things a little bit differently. We'll start with Hightower, and then let's fill out the 5 flex spots. I'll throw in Mac Jones. I think you're going to want to get more looks from him today. And based off of last week, his performance could have been a whole lot better. If you say you think he's going to play potentially a half, that just makes me like him even more.
Yeah, love Mac Jones. We got to look at the defenses. One specifically, New England, I think there's a slight edge there, but probably both. And we got really different at the captain slot already. And if you're playing a receiver, Hightower's that sort of downfield deep threat mold that could catch a Quez Watkins like touchdown we saw from week 1. So I don't think we have to get too crazy with our flexes now that we already did that.
All right.
Let's go New England.
You want to go New England?
Yeah.
All right. So we've got Hightower, we have Mac Jones, we have New England. I got to go with Gainwell. I mean, at this point, we're just going with what we expect to be less running backs in the backfield. I also think Miles Sanders' role is so defined at this point that you could be right, and he only plays a series or two. And if that's the case, there are some players on this roster in the running back position that are going to get a lot of work. Gainwell probably ends up being that. So we have Hightower at captain. We have Mac Jones, we have Kenneth Gainwell, and we have the New England Patriots with 2 spots to go.
I think this is where you ask yourself, like, how does John Hightower become the optimal captain? Again, we're talking large field tournaments. If you're talking cash lineups, you don't need to have this conversation. Hightower is not even in your captain, but is a long touchdown from Flacco enough to put him in the optimal lineup versus a defense, versus maybe a Ramondre or JJ Taylor? And I think that's worth asking, because that long touchdown that Flacco had in preseason week 1 really elevated him.
Yeah. So who do you, so you want to go, so who are you thinking?
This is a rare situation where I'd probably look to the correlation here with Flacco, just because we used Hightower as captain. And how does Hightower become optimal captain? I think he has to hit a long touchdown.
For sure. That's actually a pretty solid point. What could it be, Mullins though? Or will it, you think it'll definitely be Flacco?
It could be Mullins too. Hightower, I think, is probably going to get some run with both units.
Okay. I like it. I like the thinking here. All right. So Jordan, do we have this up? Yeah, we got it up. We got Hightower, Mac Jones, Gainwell, Patriots, and then you put in Joe Flacco. So we've got, not that it really matters all that much. You got a receiver for Philly. You got a quarterback and a running back for Philly. Patriots defense, Mac Jones. I think at this point, and I'm not trying to get any correlation play here, but I don't mind going with an N'Keal Harry or a Wilkerson, just because those snaps are important, Matt. And if we're projecting them for 30 plus or almost 40 snaps, you have to think that is really valuable on a showdown slate in the preseason.
Yeah, I do. And I don't think they're going to be running a lot of downfield sort of routes. So that is valuable, and it gives you a safer floor. And I think that would be good in this lineup because we have a lot of volatility at the captain already.
You guys have any questions? Hit us up. We got a couple minutes to go here. I don't mind this lineup at all. And I think it's, again, a good point that if Hightower is the guy that hits and is the optimal, it's probably going to come like we saw last week on the Flacco to Quez Watkins long touchdown there. Makes sense to me. And Brandon, I don't think Hightower is good either, but it's the preseason. So, it makes sense. Makes sense to throw him in there. I think it's a pretty nice lineup, and I don't think it'll be supremely popular either. I don't know how many dupes there are going to be on a showdown where anybody can do anything at any point in the game.
Yeah, if you run like a cash lineup out there, like one of the defenses a captain and then just play all the optimals we talked about, you'll get duped. But like I said, you don't have to get crazy different. Like, switch out your defense captain for one of your flex spots, and you'll probably shave off a ton of ownership there. Maybe you play mostly a cash lineup and you put one flyer in one of the flex spots, like a Devin Ross or a Zuber or something like that. And then that's how you get different. And we're talking tournaments right now.
And I forgot to ask you, we did have the super chat earlier about Norden, but are you looking to get any kicker action in today?
Yeah, I have the kicker in my cash lineup. Definitely a staple of tournaments. The ceiling is somewhat capped, but again, just the floor kickers give you are so valuable in these contests. And a lot of these drives with the second and third teams stall out anyway. We don't have backup kickers on tonight's slate. We don't even have a starting kicker for Philly. They're going to be using their punter out there. And when you can get a team with one kicker like New England, it's really valuable.
Yeah. With Elliott out, do you just have are they confirmed using their punter?
Yeah. His name is like Aaron with AA. I don't know how to say his name.
Ron?
Yeah. I don't know. I looked at it earlier. I'm like, I have never even heard of this guy. I'm not in the, punter streets. It's Aaryn Sipos, Siposs. Aaron Sipos.
Oh, okay.
It's
That's
in the
good
chat.
to know.
It's in the chat now.
Nice. There you go.
That's
Anyway.
the dude kicking. And by kicking, I think they mean kicking off. Like he's going to be handling kickoffs.
So they probably just won't kick field. That's actually, I didn't think about that, but they might just not kick field goals at all tonight and go for it on 4th down if it makes enough sense.
Especially if it's longer. Like if we're talking a 45-yard field goal, what's the point?
Right. There is no point at all. You're not trying out your punter to see if he can be your field goal kicker.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? So why not get some additional snaps in? I don't know. Maybe a little bit of a tiebreaker there if you're on the fence about certain players. That'll do it for us, guys. I meant to mention this earlier, too. Our fantasy football draft kit for anybody playing best ball, home leagues, high stakes, doesn't matter. Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, and the team. My God, Steve Buzzard and Sean Zahn, and guys that have just won an insane amount of money playing fantasy sports and DFS, have their projections, their rankings, created an amazing tool called the Draft Wingman. And if you want to check that out, it has an amazing recommendation engine that helps you make the most optimal lineup possible. We're taking the DFS game into the fantasy football space, and no one out there is doing that. Also have a bunch of best ball tools built into the Draft Wingman, other stuff like the top bust breakouts, sleepers tool, and so much more over at awesemo.com. And if you use the promo code WR, you'll get it for $9.95. The whole kit for $9.95. So go to awesemo.com/join if you want to check that out as well. Getting ready for your drafts, and check us out at the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel as well. Good luck tonight, guys. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajeski, myself at Lafayette_D. And Matt, what do you say maybe tomorrow or something, we'll do a best ball draft. We'll throw it out there. We'll do like a $50 best ball draft and have some fun and throw it out on Twitter and have people join in.
Yeah, man, I'm in.
All right, beautiful. Thanks for producing Jordan Klein as always. We'll catch you back here on the next one. Good luck tonight, guys.